What if I told you that everything you have been taught about becoming a better person, working harder, trying longer, pushing yourself, is actually the exact thing preventing you from growing?
That is that is quite a thought to start with. It completely flips the script on how we usually approach self-improvement.
Welcome to Scripture Demystified. We are so glad you are joining us for this deep dive today. And before we get too far in, we just want to warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel so we can keep sharing these gentle, practical explorations of the Bible with you.
Yes, please do. We love having you at the table with us.
So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt completely drained trying to force yourself to be patient or trying so incredibly hard to be kind, only to snap when the pressure gets too high?
I think we all have. That sheer exhaustion is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
I am joined by our resident Bible researcher, and together we are going to look at a very famous list of 9 words from Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. You might know it as the fruit of the Spirit.
But our mission for this deep dive is to understand how to actually live these qualities in your daily life, not as an exhausting checklist, but as a completely natural result of a spiritual connection.
Exactly. And to do that, before we look at the specific fruits, we have to look at the soil they were planted in. We need to understand why the Apostle Paul wrote this list in the first place.
Right, because moving away from that heavy burden of performance is crucial here.
Okay, let's unpack this. We constantly see these 9 words: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We see them on Sunday school posters and coffee mugs.
Oh, everywhere. They're beautifully decorated.
They are. But because of that, we treat them like Boy Scout badges we have to earn. But Paul specifically called them fruit. And well, if you have ever gardened, you know you cannot manufacture a tomato through sheer willpower.
No, you certainly cannot. You cannot just stand over a plant and demand that it produce something.
Right. It just doesn't work that way.
What's fascinating here is the historical context. Paul wrote Galatians as a response to a very serious crisis. The early churches in Galatia were quite literally being torn apart.
Because teachers had come in and were pressuring the church to perform, right?
Exactly. They were insisting that simply having faith wasn't enough. They were telling the people they needed to adhere to strict rules, like circumcision and the law of Moses, to earn God's love.
Wow. So they turned grace into a transaction.
They did, and that pressure did not make the community more holy. It actually made them anxious, brittle, and cruel.
Which Paul writes about, doesn't he?
Yes, he describes it with brutal honesty. He warns them that if they keep biting and devouring each other, they will be destroyed. This community was eating itself alive.
Because when you live under the constant pressure of trying to prove your worth, everything becomes a competition.
That is the core issue. Paul calls this ego-driven state the flesh. It produces hatred and jealousy, precisely because worth becomes conditional.
So if trying harder to be good just creates more anxiety, what is the alternative?
To break that cycle, we have to look at an image Jesus gave in John chapter 15. He said, "I am the vine, you are the branches."
I love that imagery. It's so peaceful.
It really is. A branch does not squeeze out fruit. It doesn't stress or try harder. It just stays connected. It abides.
It just rests there.
Yes. The life flows from the vine, and the fruit appears. So if you are listening to this and you feel exhausted, it might be because you are trying to manufacture these qualities instead of simply staying connected to the source.
You are trying to be the vine instead of the branch. That is such a comforting realization.
It takes so much weight off your shoulders.
It really does. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Once we stop striving and start abiding, this connection begins to change us from the inside out. Let's look at the first 3 fruits: love, joy, and peace.
These 3 are entirely about reshaping our internal landscape before we ever deal with the outside world.
Let's start with love, because, we use that word for everything.
From our spouse to our favorite pizza.
Exactly. But the original Greek word Paul used here is agape.
Right, and agape is not a feeling that waits for warmth. In our culture, love is often a spontaneous feeling, but agape is a chosen, willed action.
It moves toward the unlovable.
Yes, it creates warmth rather than waiting for it. You aren't acting loving to earn your worth. You do it because your worth is already secure in the vine.
Which naturally leads to joy. And there is a real paradox here about joy.
How so?
Well, we usually think of joy as happiness when things go right. But Paul wrote about joy from inside a Roman prison.
Yes, he wrote the letter to the Philippians, the most joy-saturated letter we have, from a dark, damp cell. He was wearing literal chains.
Which means biblical joy cannot just be happiness.
Not at all. Happiness is conditional. Joy is an unshakable awareness that your deepest security is not dependent on your circumstances.
And you practice that through the discipline of gratitude, right?
Exactly. Training your attention to name what is already true and secure.
That deep security is the perfect foundation for the next fruit, which is peace. The peace that surpasses understanding.
Think of Jesus sleeping peacefully in the back of a boat during a violent storm, while experienced fishermen were panicking.
It is the exact same storm, but a completely different internal reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, peace isn't about understanding your situation or making the math add up.
We spend so much energy trying to figure everything out, thinking that will give us peace.
But Philippians tells us to release our request to God through prayer and thanksgiving. You hand the math over to Him, so His peace can stand guard over your mind.
That is so freeing. Practice seeing people as more than their usefulness to you. Train your attention to name what is secure. But we don't just live inside our own heads, do we?
No, we certainly do not.
If love, joy, and peace secure us internally, how do we interact with a world that is frustrating, slow, and broken?
That brings us to the outward actions: patience, kindness, and goodness.
There's an old Christian joke that says, never pray for patience because God will give you something to be patient about.
That is a classic.
Yeah.
And it highlights how much we dread it.
Right. But isn't patience just passively sitting in a waiting room without complaining?
This raises an important question about how we view waiting. The Greek word makrothemia means having a long fuse or long suffering.
A long fuse. I like that.
It is active endurance with dignity. It is refusing to let delay turn into bitterness. Think of Abraham waiting 25 years, or Job sitting in the ashes.
They weren't just passively sitting there, they were actively trusting the vine.
Precisely. And as we endure, we need both kindness and goodness.
Now, in modern English, we treat those as synonyms, just being a nice person.
But they're very different. Kindness is being soft, approachable, and seeing people's humanity first. Like Jesus interacting with tax collectors, he made them feel safe.
So what is goodness then?
Goodness is kindness with a backbone.
Yeah.
It has moral edges. It confronts injustice. It is Jesus turning over tables in the temple to stop exploitation.
Oh, wow. So goodness is actually fierce when it needs to be.
Yes, we need both. Kindness makes people feel safe, but goodness keeps them honest.
Next time you are stuck in a painful waiting season, maybe dealing with difficult people, try to reframe the wait. Ask yourself, what is being built in me while I wait?
Because true goodness requires a foundation of integrity and restraint.
Which leads us perfectly to the final three fruits: faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
These are the quiet, controlled strengths.
So what does this all mean for us today? Because our culture tells us that gentleness means being weak or being a pushover, and it tells us that self-control is just repressive and inauthentic.
Those cultural narratives completely miss the beauty of these words. Let's look at gentleness, or prats. In the ancient world, this word described a trained wild horse.
Wait, really? A war horse?
Yes. Immense staggering power that is perfectly channeled and controlled. Moses was described as gentle, and he parted seas. He wasn't weak.
He had power, but he knew how to restrain it.
Exactly. Gentleness is knowing exactly how much force a situation requires and using absolutely no more than that.
That is incredible. And faithfulness is similar, isn't it? It is a quiet strength.
Faithfulness, or pistis, is built in secret. It is built on a quiet Tuesday morning when no one is watching.
It isn't performative. You don't get applause for it.
No. It is believing the unseen audience is the most important one. It is honoring commitments when it is costly.
And that requires the final fruit: self-control and kritia.
Yes. And again, this isn't white-knuckled suppression. It is mastery from within, a redirected desire.
I have heard self-control compared to the banks of a river.
That is the perfect analogy. The riverbank gives the river its power and its depth. Without it, the water just spills everywhere and becomes a shallow swamp.
So without self-control, love becomes possessiveness.
Yes, and joy becomes hedonism. Self-control is the structure that allows the other fruits to flourish safely.
It gives our lives actual momentum. If you want to cultivate this, build the fence before you need it. The athlete decides to train the night before, not when the alarm goes off.
Be faithful in the smallest things right in front of you.
Yes, just pause. Take a deep breath and ask, what does this moment actually need from me, before reacting?
That momentary pause is where grace enters in.
As we bring this to a close, there is one incredible final phrase Paul uses at the end of Galatians 5, verse 23. He says, Against such things there is no law.
It is such a quiet, brilliant defiance.
You really cannot legislate love into existence, can you?
No. You cannot pass a mandate for joy or write a rule book for genuine gentleness.
These qualities only grow from the inside out.
They come from the root. The fruit comes because you stayed connected to the vine, not because you forced it.
We want to leave you with a gentle, challenging thought to ponder during your week. Instead of asking, which of these 9 fruits do I need to work harder on today? Ask yourself this. What anxiety, what performance, or what bitterness is currently keeping me disconnected from the vine?
That is a beautiful question to sit with.
It really changes everything. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. If this conversation brought some peace to your day, we politely invite you to like, share, and subscribe to Scripture Demystified. We would love to continue journeying together through these meaningful, practical lessons for your spiritual life.
It has been a joy.
Have a truly peaceful day. Remember to let go of the striving and simply rest in the vine.